What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we continue our 2022 schedule preview / projected record series with Miami coming up next here. We're going to take a look at that schedule and give you a projected record, not a prediction. Keep in mind our predictions are still a few months away, but this is simply a projection based off of how tough the schedule is and how good each team is expected to be as we take a very early look at 2022. Before we get to 2022, let's look back at 2021. Miami had one of the toughest non-conference schedules in the country in 2021. Had to play Alabama, had to play Michigan State, and then App State. So that was a really tough non-conference schedule. You look at who they had to play out of the Atlantic Division. They had to play NC State and they had to play Florida State. So they avoided Wake Forest and Clemson, but still not an easy schedule. They didn't get to play, say a Syracuse. And that was the schedule for last year. Let's look ahead to this season, and here is your 2022 schedule for Miami. Before we go game by game, let's look at who they play outside of the division. So who does Miami play in the non-conference and out of the Atlantic Division? Because, of course, they're going to play every team in the Coastal. They will play Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss, and then on the road at Texas A&M and then Middle Tennessee. That'll be the non-conference schedule. Yes, Texas A&M is a very tough game, and it's a very tough place to play. So that is a really tough non-conference game there with Texas A&M. But other than that, it's much easier than it was last year. Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee, 3 what should be easy wins there for Miami. But again, a very tough game against Texas A&M. They'll play Florida State, who they always play out of the Atlantic, but then they'll play Clemson. They will play Clemson on the road. That is a tough one. It's going to be late in the year. So maybe that's why they did not schedule a second quality non-conference game, because they knew they were going to be playing Clemson this year. But yes, Clemson on the road, Texas A&M on the road. 2 very tough games. Probably 2 top, let's say top 10 teams. Probably 2 top 10 teams on the road there for Miami. So going game by game, they start with Bethune-Cookman, then Southern Miss. That'll be their first 2 games. Nice to have 2 games like that to get started, work out the kinks, especially with the new coaching staff and everything. Then the big one against Texas A&M on September the 17th. Because that one's on the road, it's going to be very tough. Let's just be honest. It's going to be tough for Miami to win that game. Not saying they can't win it, but they will definitely be underdogs. And then they'll play Middle Tennessee on the 24th. So you get the non-conference games out of the way, then they roll into conference play. On October the 8th, they will play North Carolina at home. Could be a big game in the division. We'll see where North Carolina stands. I feel better about Miami than I do about North Carolina coming into this year. Virginia Tech on the road on the 15th. Then they'll play Duke on the 22nd, Virginia on the 29th. So you look at that schedule for the month of October, and it's not horrible. It's not horrible. And they actually have a bye week, by the way, before North Carolina. So the first Saturday of October, they will have a bye week. And so they'll have a bye week before they play their conference games. And then it'll just be 8 straight weeks of conference games. But a very manageable October. North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Duke, Virginia, all winnable games. If I had to say right now, I'd probably say Miami is going to be favored in those 4 games. Of course, the ACC has been pretty unpredictable in recent years, so Virginia Tech could wind up being a top 15 team. Who knows? But a very manageable schedule for the month of October. If they're able to get through that schedule, and let's say they do lose to Texas A&M, they could still be sitting at 7-1 going into the month of November. They'd probably be ranked pretty high, and then everything's right there in front of them. A very tough stretch to finish it out, though. On the 5th, they'll play Florida State. Then they'll play Georgia Tech on November the 12th on the road. Then it's Clemson on the road on the 19th and Pittsburgh on the 26th. So they will close out the year with Pitt. That's the schedule right there. I think there's a good chance this Miami team could be 7-1 going into November, like I said. Now, if we get some of the performances we've gotten in recent years for Miami, they'll probably lose to some teams that they should beat. So I'm not saying they have an easy 7-1, but it's very possible that they could be 7-1. Then again, a huge game with Florida State. But it could come down, at least the division could come down to that last Saturday. That game against Pittsburgh, that could be where we determine this division if those wind up being the top 2 teams. Again, I think this division's kind of wide open this year. I don't think Pitt's going to be quite as good as they were last season. Miami will have a great shot. But that month of November, that's where we're going to find out about Miami. Is this team for real? Are they a contender? Or are they the same Miami team we've seen in recent years? Going to be really interesting to see. And that's, again, if they can survive that month of October. North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Duke, and Virginia. You like their chances in those games, but they could lose one of those games for sure. But if they can take care of business and win those 4 games, November, that's where we will find out about this Miami team and where they stand in the big picture in college football, and really also in the division race with that game against Pittsburgh there to close things out. So a schedule that's manageable for Miami, not as tough as last year's. You hate to see, if you're a Miami fan, you hate to see Clemson on the road there towards the end of the season, and you got a tough non-conference game with Texas A&M, but a division that's wide open gives Miami a chance really in every other game that they play. Not saying they don't have a chance against A&M or Clemson, but they have a really good chance in the other 10 games, even with those 2 really tough matchups on the road. Here were the projections from 2021 for Miami. They were 7-5. Our projection had them at 8-4. It was actually pretty accurate at 8-4 there. Our prediction was 10-2. I thought this team was going to be better. I thought this had a chance to be a special year last year, and it just didn't work out that way. 10-2. That was my prediction. Obviously, I overrated this Miami team. Seems like I overrate Miami a lot. They have definitely underperformed in recent years. The projection from the FBI was 7.9 and 4.4. So they also had them right there around 8-4. And then the over-under, 9.5. So Vegas was high on this team, but the FBI was closer. Our projection was closer than the prediction from me, and also the Vegas prediction, the over-under there, all the way up at 9.5. So let's look now at 2022 and see what the projection is for this team. And it's another tough one because you have a new coaching staff, some transfers coming in. How is it all going to gel together? Could be a special season, could be potentially a disappointing season. We'll see. But here is how this is going to work. The white games, the games that stay in white, those are basically your 50-50 games where I think the spread will be 3 or 4 points or less. Less than 20%, over 80%, that's a game where I think the spread will be at least 2 touchdowns or more, almost a guaranteed win. And then you got your 20 to 29%, 71 to 80% games. Those are games where I think it'll be a double-digit spread, 10, 11 points, somewhere in there. And then you have 30 to 39, 61 to 70%. Those are games where I think a team is going to be favored by about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points, somewhere in that range. So for Miami, you've got a few easy wins here on the schedule: Bethune-Cookman, Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee, and Duke. Now, Duke is closer to 80% than they are 100%. Obviously, it is a conference game, but that's a pretty wide range there, all the way from 81 to 100%. Bethune-Cookman, obviously, that's like a 99% game. Southern Miss, Middle Tennessee, closer to probably 90 to 95%, and Duke is closer to 80%. But all of these games, I think Miami will be favored by at least 2 touchdowns, and those are games where they should win. Not automatic wins, but games that they should win. It would be a pretty big surprise if they lost any of these 4 games. Now let's go to the blue. We've got one blue game. That's Georgia Tech on the road on November 12th. This one's a little tricky for me. It is a road game. Georgia Tech, I don't think is going to be terrible, but still, I think Miami is clearly the better team. I think they will be favored by 10 or 11 points in this game, and so we're going to put that one in the blue. All right, how about the games where they're going to be an underdog? A couple of them. I think Texas A&M and Clemson, both games where Miami will be about a touchdown underdog. Could be more than that. Part of that's how good's Clemson going to be. Are they going to return to their old form? If this is the Clemson that we have seen before last year, the Clemson we had seen for several years, this probably is more of an orange game. And Texas A&M, I think, has potential to be an orange game as well. But I think Miami has a chance to be a top 25 team this year, and because of that, I think we can put these games in the yellow. I think they're only going to be about a touchdown underdog, even though it's 2 really good teams and they're both on the road. And then the rest of the schedule for Miami, I'm leaving in this 50-50 range. You got North Carolina, you got Virginia Tech on the road, Virginia on the road, Florida State, and Pittsburgh. So we start with North Carolina. Obviously, it's been kind of a weird series between these 2 teams, but that's one that is tough to predict right now. Don't really know how good North Carolina is going to be. It is a home game for Miami, so if you wanted to lean towards the purple on this game, I would understand that. But again, I think it's one that could probably go either way. I would favor Miami, but I'm not going to go as far as to say that this is a game where they'll be favored by a touchdown. I think Miami will be a better team than Virginia Tech and Virginia, but both of these games are on the road. Virginia returns their starting quarterback. Virginia Tech's a tough place to play. I think you got to put these games in that 50-50 range. Both games were close last year. Florida State's a rivalry game. They've got some question marks coming into this year as well. How will their young talent play? But again, with the rivalry game, yeah, I'd favor Miami at home, but not enough to bump this into the purple. And then Pittsburgh, the team that won the division last year. This is going to be a tough game here. Keaton Slovis coming over to fill in that role for Kenny Pickett. A lot of talent coming back around him. Yes, I think Pitt is definitely a 50-50 game there at the end of the season. So when you average all this out, we count the 50-50 games as 50%. We don't have any purple, but the blue is counted as 75%. The yellow as 35%. The green, they're counted as wins, 100%. And that's how we get the projection. So we average it all out. And the projection for Miami is the same as last year, 8-4. That is the projection for this team. They were under that projection last year at 7-5. That was a disappointing year. I think it's the same can be said this year. If they finish 7-5, I think it's a disappointment. If they go 9-3, it's a good year. 8-4 is kind of right there in the middle. That is the projection. This team, I think, has potential to do much better than 8-4, or maybe not much better, maybe 10-2. But they also have the potential to finish 6-6. I mean, there are some tough games here on the schedule. So how will it all play out? I think the projection, is pretty fair here at 8-4. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think the projection should be higher, should be lower, or do you think it's right on the money at 8-4? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.